From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
These are kids who have to go to school all the time worried about being bullied by other kids, being bullied sometimes even by educators. And now they have to worry about the Attorney General of the United States and the President of the United States bullying them. It's just not okay.
The Trump administration has rescinded President Obama's landmark decision to order public schools to let transgender students use the bathrooms matching their chosen gender identity. We'll get response from the ACLU, then to Standing Rock.
After the deadline of February 22nd, 2017 at 2 p.m.,
we are all at risk of facing arrests, police brutality, federal charges, and prison time.
10 people are arrested as the main resistance camp set up by Lakota water protectors fighting the Dakota Access Pipeline has been largely vacated after protesters were ordered to leave the camp. We'll go to North Dakota for the latest. And then more evidence comes to light about the close ties between new EPA head Scott Pruitt and the fossil fuel industry.
Why do you need an outside oil company to draft a letter when you have 250 people working for you?
Senator, as I've indicated, that was an effort that was protecting the state's interest and making sure that we made the voices of all Oklahomans heard on a very important industry to our state.
Thousands of pages of newly released emails reveal how Scott Pruitt closely collaborated with Koch brothers-backed oil, coal, and gas companies to roll back environmental regulations during his time as Oklahoma's Attorney General. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In North Dakota, the main resistance camp set up by the Lakota water protectors fighting the $3.8 billion Dakota Access Pipeline has been largely vacated after protesters were ordered to leave the camp Wednesday. Police arrested about 10 people. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the North Dakota governor had imposed a noon eviction deadline for the hundreds of water protectors still living at the resistance camp. This is Governor Doug Burgum speaking on Wednesday.
Our big ask for tomorrow is that, anybody that's remaining in the camp, we want to make sure they know that they have an opportunity to voluntarily leave, take your belongings, remove anything that you think might be culturally significant, and we'll help you get on your way if you need to do that.
Prayer ceremonies were held Wednesday, and part of the camp was set on fire before the eviction began. One 17-year-old girl was badly injured by the fires. Water protectors say the resistance camp sits on unceded Sioux territory under the 1851 Treaty of Fort Laramie, and that they have a right to remain on their ancestral land. A couple dozen people are still remaining at the camp.
A little scared of getting arrested and whatever consequences come from that, but I believe wholeheartedly in the movement here and I'm willing to risk that.
Earlier this month, construction crews resumed work on the final section of the pipeline after the Trump administration granted an easement to allow Energy Transfer Partners to drill beneath the Missouri River. The Trump administration's rescinded key protections for transgender students in public schools. The move reverses President Obama's landmark decision last May to order public schools to let transgender students use the bathrooms matching their chosen gender identity. On Wednesday, hundreds of protesters gathered outside the White House to call on Trump to protect transgender students. Participants included Mara Kiesling of the National Center for Transgender Rights.
The worst-case scenario is what is already happening. Children all over the country are scared by this man. They are really worried that they're going to go to school tomorrow. They're going to be bullied. These are kids who have to go to school all the time worried about being bullied by other kids, being bullied sometimes even by educators. And now they have to worry about the Attorney General of the United States and the President of the United States bullying them. It's just not okay.
According to press accounts, there was initially a fight over the issue in the Oval Office between Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Education Secretary Betsy DeVos on Tuesday. The New York Times reports DeVos initially resisted signing off and told Trump that she was uncomfortable because of the potential harm that rescinding the protections could cause transgender students. The president sided with Sessions and pushed DeVos to drop her opposition, which she did. The White House says President Trump will wait until next week to unveil a new ban on refugees and travelers from some majority Muslim countries. President Trump's January 27th executive order canceled tens of thousands of visas, stranding travelers worldwide and sparking mass protests at airports before a federal appeals court blocked the order. Trump had promised to unveil a revised order this week. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly visited Mexico City Wednesday in the first visit by senior Trump administration officials since Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto canceled a planned meeting with President Trump last month. The pair sought to improve relations with Mexico after Trump promised to force Mexico to pay for an expanded border wall and after his administration announced plans for mass deportations to Mexico, including immigrants who are not Mexican citizens. Mexico's foreign minister, Luis Videgaray, Wednesday angrily denounced those plans.
I want to say clearly and emphatically that the government of Mexico and the Mexican people do not have to accept provisions that one government unilaterally wants to impose on the other. We will not accept it because there's no reason why we should, and because it is not in the interests of Mexico.
The Mexican foreign minister added Mexico will ask the United Nations to help preserve the rights of immigrants inside the United States. At the U.S.-Mexico border, a 45-year-old man leapt to his death just minutes after he was deported by U.S. border guards. Witnesses say Guadalupe Olivas Valencia was distraught and shouted he didn't want to return to Mexico moments before he committed suicide by jumping from a bridge at the El Chaparral border crossing in Tijuana. Olivas' family says he was a widowed father of 3 who was struggling to support his children. In Texas, ICE officers removed an undocumented immigrant asylum seeker from a hospital where she was being treated for a brain tumor and returned her to a detention center. Lawyers for the Salvadoran woman, who's identified only as Sarah, say immigration agents cut off all communication with her family and attorneys and bound her hands and ankles as they transferred her from the hospital to the for-profit Prairie Land Detention Center near Dallas. The lawyers say Sarah has been suffering convulsions, nosebleeds, and severe headaches and needs brain surgery if she's to survive. Protests by thousands of angry constituents at town hall meetings across the country Wednesday once again targeted Republican lawmakers as voters challenged the policies of President Trump and Republican Congress. In Louisiana, constituents chanted, "Where is he?" as Senator Bill Cassidy arrived nearly a half-hour late to a public forum. They booed as Senator Cassidy defended his plans to repeal the Affordable Care Act. In Arkansas, Senator Tom Cotton was jeered by hundreds after proclaiming the U.S. has the world's best health care system and questioned about President Trump's plans to expand the wall on the U.S.-Mexico border.
Donald Trump makes Mexicans not important to people who are in Arkansas who like Mexicans, like me, my grandma, and all my people. And he's deleting all the parks and PBS Kids just to make a wall. He shouldn't do that. He shouldn't. He shouldn't do all that stuff for just a wall.
That was a 7-year-old constituent of Senator Cotton named Toby. In New Jersey, Congressmember Leonard Lance heard angry boos from constituents after pledging to bar federal funding for abortion. Wednesday's raucous town hall meetings come on the heels of similar protests at events by Republican Senators Chuck Grassley and Joni Ernst of Iowa, Florida Congressmember Dennis Ross, Tennessee Congressmember Marsha Blackburn, and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell of Kentucky. Thousands of pages of newly released emails reveal how EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt closely collaborated with Koch brothers-backed oil, coal, and gas companies to roll back environmental regulations during his time as Oklahoma's Attorney General. The documents were released just days after Pruitt was sworn in as the new head of the EPA, the agency tasked with curtailing pollution and safeguarding public health. The trove of new documents shows how energy companies drafted language for Pruitt's Attorney General office to use to sue the EPA over environmental regulations. We'll have more on Scott Pruitt's emails after headlines. We'll speak with Lisa Graves of the Center for Media and Democracy, which successfully sued for the emails release. The Supreme Court overturned the death sentence of a Texas prisoner Wednesday after ruling his own defense team presented a jury with racist comments. Dwayne Buck was convicted of murdering his former girlfriend in 1996. At his trial, a state psychologist called by the defense testified African-American criminals are more likely to pose a future danger to the public. Writing for the majority in a 6-2 decision, Chief Justice John Roberts ruled, quote, the testimony appealed to a powerful racial stereotype, that of black men as violence-prone, end quote. In Anaheim, California, videos emerged of an off-duty police officer grabbing a 13-year-old boy by his hoodie and restraining him before drawing a pistol and firing a single shot. No one was injured in Tuesday's incident, which was captured on a cell phone video that went viral on social media. The video shows a man in plain clothes holding a boy against his will who says repeatedly, "Let me go." The officer is surrounded by other children who eventually come to the aid of the boy, pushing the officer over a row of hedges. The man is then seen drawing a pistol from his waistband before a gunshot rings out. Anaheim police say the officer had an ongoing dispute against children who were walking on his lawn. Both the 13-year-old boy and his 15-year-old brother were arrested. The off-duty officer, who has not been identified, was questioned by Anaheim police and released. The LAPD said today he's on paid administrative leave. Overnight, hundreds of protesters gathered near the officer's home before marching through Anaheim streets and blocking intersections. In Iraq, security forces stormed Mosul's airport and a nearby military base today as they sought to capture the city's western half from ISIS. Mosul has been besieged since October when U.S. Special Forces joined Iraq's army, Shia militias, and Kurdish fighters in a campaign to capture the city from the self-proclaimed Islamic State. A military spokesman admitted Wednesday U.S. troops have been wounded in the fighting, but would not say how many. Aid groups say they've prepared food and basic supplies for up to 400,000 civilians who are expected to flee the fighting. The United Nations says it needs to raise $5.6 billion, most of it by the end of March, to avert a famine affecting 20 million people in Yemen and several African countries. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said Wednesday that war and climate change have left millions at risk of starvation in a world of plenty.
I'm here with my colleagues to draw the world's attention to the fact that today, more than 20 million people in South Sudan, Somalia, Yemen, and northeast Nigeria are going hungry and facing devastating levels of food insecurity. Famine is already a reality in parts of South Sudan. Unless we act now, it is only a matter of time until it affects other areas and other countries. We are facing a tragedy. We must avoid it becoming a catastrophe. This is preventable if the international community takes decisive action.
Hardest hit is Yemen, where a U.S.-backed Saudi-led bombing campaign and naval blockade has left more than 14 million people hungry, among them nearly 500,000 children who face severe, acute malnutrition. The Trump administration seeking to shield a high-ranking intelligence official from testifying over her role in torturing prisoners at a secret CIA black site. In a court filing, the Justice Department says it'll assert a state secrets privilege to shield CIA Deputy Director Gina Haspel from being deposed in a civil trial against psychologists James Mitchell and Bruce Jessen. The pair are being sued for overseeing the torture of 4 men, one of whom died in CIA custody. Haspel was reportedly present at a CIA black site in Thailand in 2002 as interrogators carried out Mitchell and Jessen's program of waterboarding, beating, sleep deprivation, starvation, and other forms of torture. This month, the former acting director of the CIA confirmed that in 2005, Haspel personally oversaw the destruction of videotapes showing torture at the black site. In San Jose, California, more than 14,000 residents have been forced to evacuate their homes after heavy rains caused the region's largest reservoir to overflow. Some neighborhoods were so badly flooded, firefighters went door to door in boats rescuing trapped residents. It's the worst flooding to hit Silicon Valley in a century. And Richmond, California, has become the first U.S. city to call for an investigation into whether to impeach President Donald Trump. Tuesday's resolution, approved by the Richmond City Council, states Trump is in violation of the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution, which prohibits people holding federal office from accepting payments from foreign governments. These are some of the city officials who voted unanimously in favor of the impeachment resolution.
Ordinarily, it would be odd to be talking about well, everything about this administration is odd, but it would be odd to be talking about the impeachment of a president only a month into his term. Unfortunately, with this president, it's oddly appropriate.
The word is very, very clear that the residents of these United States are not in alignment with his movement of hate, his movement of fear, his movement of bullying and intimidation, and his movement of just out and out lies.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The Trump administration has rescinded key protections for transgender students in public schools. The move reverses President Obama's landmark decision last May to order public schools to let transgender students use the bathrooms matching their chosen gender identity. The Obama administration had threatened to withhold funding for schools that did not comply. According to press accounts, there was a split in the Trump administration over the issue between Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Education Secretary Betsy DeVos. The New York Times reports DeVos initially resisted signing off and told Trump she was uncomfortable because of the potential harm that rescinding the protections could cause transgender students. At a meeting on Tuesday in the Oval Office, the president sided with Sessions and pushed DeVos to drop her opposition, which she did. DeVos later issued a statement saying, in part, quote, "This is an issue best solved at the state and local level." On Wednesday, hundreds of protesters gathered outside the White House to call on Trump to protect transgender students. Participants included Gavin Grimm, a 17-year-old transgender student in Virginia whose lawsuit against the Gloucester County School Board has gone to the Supreme Court.
It's frustrating that was even proposed, but this isn't going to stop us in our tracks. We're going to fight as hard as we always have, and it will not slow down at any point, and for any reason.
Mara Kiesling of the National Center for Transgender Equality also spoke outside the White House.
The worst-case scenario is what is already happening. Children all over the country are scared by this man. They are really worried that they're going to go to school tomorrow. They're going to be bullied. These are kids who have to go to school all the time worried about being bullied by other kids, being bullied sometimes even by educators. And now they have to worry about the Attorney General of the United States and the President of the United States bullying them. It's just not okay.
To talk more about President Trump's decision to roll back protections for transgender students, we're joined by Chase Strangio, staff attorney with the ACLU's LGBT and AIDS Project. The ACLU is representing Gavin Grimm in his Supreme Court case. Welcome, Chase. Talk about the significance of what's just taken place.
You know, thanks for having me. And yesterday's action by the Trump administration was really just another example of mean-spirited targeting of vulnerable individuals, this time transgender young people. The protections that the Obama administration clarified in the guidance last year were incredibly important for this community that is so vulnerable to violence and bullying in schools. What's important, though, is that as much as the Trump administration may want to change federal law, it's still in the province of Congress and the courts. And so yesterday's actions, while sending a terrible message to the young people who are going to school in this country, young people who face incredibly high rates of suicide, suicide and harassment, it does not change the law. And that's important because the protections themselves come from Title IX, they come from the Constitution, and the president himself and his executive agencies cannot change that.
So this Supreme Court case that has been brought by Gavin Grimm, this Supreme Court case will determine what happens?
Absolutely. Yesterday's actions just highlight just how important this case is. This case before the Supreme Court involving Gavin Grimm, the 17-year-old boy from Virginia who's being barred from the common spaces at his school just because he is transgender. His case is before the court.
Now, what do you mean? Explain just he's being barred from the common spaces.
His school has passed a policy solely because his principal and his guidance counselor and the people closest to him at the school said, we understand that you're a boy and you will be allowed to use the boys' restrooms and other facilities just like other boys. And his school board decided that that was unacceptable and passed a policy targeting him, explaining that he and he alone is not able to use the shared restrooms and has to be banished to a separate, isolating, faraway, and stigmatizing restroom. And he filed a lawsuit. The case is before the Supreme Court. The case is not mooted by yesterday's actions because the question before the court is, well, what does Title IX mean when it comes to transgender students? And courts for many, many years have made clear that prohibitions on sex discrimination include prohibitions on discrimination against people who are transgender because they are transgender.
Let's go to the White House press briefing yesterday with Press Secretary Sean Spicer talking about the Supreme Court decision.
There is a case pending in the Supreme Court in which we have to decide whether or not to continue to issue guidance to the court. It's dictated by that. The Obama administration had issued joint guidance from the Department of Education and the Department of Justice. We now have to decide whether or not this administration wants to continue that track that they were on. It's plain and simple. If we don't, but there are problems both in the legal and process way in which that guidance was issued. And so it's incumbent upon us to actually follow the law.
So that's Press Secretary Sean Spicer talking about the Supreme Court case.
Yeah, and Press Secretary Spicer does seem a little bit confused about the case because the United States is not a party to the case. The United States has no role. There's no deadline impending for them. And the parties to the case, Gavin Grimm and the Gloucester County School Board, have agreed before the court that the court should resolve the substantive question about Title IX. So there was no deadline with respect to that case. That case moves forward, and it is, in fact, the answer to the question of how we respond to this cruel action by the Trump administration that we saw yesterday.
So can you explain what these reports are in the New York Times and other places of the DeVos-Sessions battle in the Oval Office on Tuesday? That's Education Secretary DeVos, well known for years for her anti-gay stance, and Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
Well, you know, I wasn't there. It's hard to know exactly what's going on. I have to admit I'm a little bit surprised to hear it. I would have thought perhaps both DeVos and Sessions would have been very much in support of rescinding this guidance. Certainly, it is not a surprise from Sessions, who we are hearing is absolutely determined to roll back not only the guidance but the substantive protections for trans individuals. When it comes to DeVos, what I can say is I am imagining that she was presented with the very clear evidence that transgender students face high rates of bullying and harassment and suicide, and that the thing that helps protect trans students is respecting who they are and treating them like their peers. And so she must have thought, as she should, that perhaps it was a terrible idea to take away clarity about the protections for this population when we know that with support and protections, trans students have comparable mental health outcomes to non-trans students, and without them, they face rates of suicide attempts 9 times their peers. So the reality is that, you know, maybe she took a pause to think perhaps this was going to be a horrible idea, but unfortunately she caved, and the reality is that kids will be harmed by this, and you know, I can't say it more strongly, but the blood is on the hands of these lawmakers who are making it a priority to make vulnerable kids feel less safe.
I want to turn to Donald Trump himself. President Donald Trump was asked about transgender rights when he was running for president and appeared at a town hall event on NBC's Today Show. This was last April.
Mr. Trump, please be specific. Tell us your views on LGBT, how you plan to be inclusive as president. Speak about North Carolina bathroom law in particular.
Oh, I had a feeling that question was going to come up, I will tell you. Well, look, North Carolina did something that was very strong, and they're paying a big price, and there's a lot of problems. And I heard one of the best answers I heard was from a commentator yesterday saying, leave it the way it is right now. There have been now very few problems. Leave it the way it is. North Carolina, what they're going through with all of the business that's leaving and all of the strife, and that's on both sides. You leave it the way it is. There have been very few complaints the way it is. People go, they use the bathroom that they feel is appropriate. There has been so little trouble, and the problem with what happened in North Carolina is the strife and the economic punishment that they're taking. So I would say that's probably the best.
Do you have any transgender people working in your organization?
I don't know.
No?
I really don't know. I probably do. I really don't know.
So if Caitlyn Jenner were to walk into Trump Tower and want to use the bathroom, you would be fine with her using any bathroom she chooses?
That is correct.
So Caitlyn Jenner could use any bathroom she chooses in Trump Tower, candidate Donald Trump said. But President Donald Trump has gone with a very different approach.
You know, that was a surprising amount of clarity from then candidate Trump on the issue. And I think what it reflects is that when people first think about this, it makes perfect sense to not worry about where people go to the bathroom, because actually we've all been using the bathroom, trans people and non-trans people alike, for a very long time with no problems. And the emphasis on trying to expel trans people from the bathrooms we've been using for decades is, in fact, creating the problems. I think what we've seen now in his shift of position is, he's being caught up in the rhetoric that is really about demonizing trans individuals and making it seem not palatable to share public space with us. But that's just simply not a tenable position. And when it comes to the idea of states' rights, federal civil rights laws are by definition designed to create federal standards when it comes to civil rights. So there's no way that he can, relegate this to the states when we're talking about the United States Constitution and federal civil rights laws, which by their definition are designed to ensure that people's rights can't be rolled back at the state level.
So just 2 days before President Obama left office, he spoke about the change over the last decade around LGBTQ rights.
I'm proud that that in certain places we maybe provided a good block downfield to help the movement advance. I don't think it is something that will be reversible, because American society has changed. The attitudes of young people in particular have changed. That doesn't mean there aren't going to be some fights that are important. Legal issues, issues surrounding transgender persons. There's still going to be some battles that need to take place.
That was President Obama right before he left office, Chase.
He's right. One of the key things he said is that we are not going to roll back the progress, and that's absolutely right. Not only does this action by the Trump administration not change the substantive legal protections, but the reality is that there's a movement of people supporting the trans community. Trans people are out there speaking for themselves, and that to the extent people's answer to the question of what to do about trans people existing in the world is to tell us not to exist at all, that is just simply not tenable, and people will not stand for that. And I know that we will continue to march forward, and we will continue to stand beside the young people, particularly, who are taking on so much.
On June 12th, it was Omar Mateen, a 29-year-old security guard, who opened fire in the Pulse nightclub in Orlando and killed 49 people and wounded 53 others in a clear terrorist attack. After the Orlando shooting, Michigan lawmaker Jeremy Moss tweeted, "I literally never want to hear again that LGBT people in the bathroom are a threat to public safety." So what happens next, Chase?
What happens next is we tell the young people and their families that we will not stop fighting for them, and we tell everyone in this country to mobilize around the Supreme Court case that's happening with arguments on March 28th, because that is where we will continue to make our case for the protections that transgender individuals need, and we will stand in solidarity with all of the communities being targeted by this administration.
And if a child or anyone is harassed in school wherever, what can they do?
If a child is harassed, if they're denied access to the restroom, they can contact their local ACLU office. They can contact any organization that works with the LGBT community in their state. They can find me on Twitter. They can search for other people who are out there. We will not be silent, and we will not let people be isolated and targeted, no matter how much targeting happens from the federal government and down into the states.
Chase Strangio, thank you very much for joining us. Chase Strangio is staff attorney at the ACLU. When we come back, we go to North Dakota to the standoff at Standing Rock. Stay with us.
God, I climbed the ladder. I saw the ways that the city was flawed. I hemmed and hawed. I sold my body so my brain could eat. But I will not admit defeat. I will not admit defeat. I will. Was supposed to happen before this song. We're all grown up now. I think that time's gone on too long. The tide is strong. There's nothing wrong with being slapped out to sea. But I will not admit defeat. I will.
Tip of the Match by Ezra Furman here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In North Dakota, the main resistance camp set up by the Lakota water protectors fighting the $3.8 billion Dakota Access Pipeline has been largely vacated after protesters were ordered to leave the camp on Wednesday. Police arrested, we believe, 10 people. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the North Dakota governor had imposed a noon eviction deadline for hundreds of water protectors still living at the resistance camp. Prayer ceremonies were held Wednesday, and part of the camp was set on fire before the eviction began. Water protectors say the resistance camp sits on unceded Sioux territory under the 1851 Treaty of Fort Laramie, and that they have a right to remain on their ancestral land. A couple dozen people, we believe, are still remaining at the camp. The ongoing encampments in North Dakota were the largest gathering of Native Americans in decades. At its peak, more than 10,000 people were at the various resistance camps. Earlier this month, construction crews resumed work on the final section of the pipeline after the Trump administration reversed the Obama administration and granted an easement to allow Energy Transfer Partners to drill beneath the Missouri River. We go now to North Dakota, where we're joined by two guests. LaDonna Brave Bull Allard is a member of the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe and a founder of the Sacred Stone Camp, which continues. Linda Black Elk is an ethnobotanist and head of the Medic and Healer Council at Standing Rock. Why don't we begin with LaDonna Brave Bull Allard? You run the Sacred Stone Camp, which is on your property. But the main resistance camp, people were evicted yesterday and arrested. Can you tell us what happened?
So at the Oshete-Shakoan camp, the people were given a 2 o'clock deadline to leave the camp. And we had like a small snowstorm that came in and also rain. And right now, to get people out of the camps is almost impossible with the mud. Trucks are stuck in the mud. People are trying their best to follow, but the weather has not been cooperating. So at 2 o'clock, we figured they would come in. We went on the hills to pray. And at 3 o'clock, they still had not come in. And at 4 o'clock, we got word that they were coming in. And about 4:30 or so, they arrested some media people. and that was about 10 people that got arrested yesterday, mostly all media. And the police and National Guard and stuff backed off and said they would be in the camp at 9 o'clock this morning.
Today, in just a few hours. You're an hour behind Eastern Standard Time. Your camp, however, Sacred Stone Camp, are people still encamped there?
Because of so many people coming in, as we were kind of joking, we were taking all the refugees from Oshete. I had cars all the way up to the gate. People are coming in with teepees and tents. I think that our camp has quadrupled in the last 24 hours.
How many people would you estimate are on your land? Now, that's private property. That's yours, along the Cannonball River.
So we were averaging about 200 when the numbers got really low. And then we had the veterans come in, and they must be a couple thousand veterans, and all the new people. So I don't even have an account. There are a lot of people.
Linda Black Elk, can you talk about what's happening now and where you see the standoff at Standing Rock headed and why it's important to you?
Well, you know, the whole reason that I got involved in this, I live on Standing Rock, and my children are from here. They're members of the Standing Rock Nation. And the whole reason I got involved is because I couldn't stand to see the legacy that their ancestors have left them to be destroyed yet again, or to be threatened yet again. And so I got involved to protect the water. But you know, I realize that this is about more than just water. This is, of course, about treaty rights also. This is about the protection of sacred sites. But even more so, as an ethnobotanist, I've come to realize that this is about the edible and medicinal plants that grow adjacent to the pipeline, right within the path of the pipeline. You know, this pipeline is akin to cultural genocide. So, you know, I know that I have to stand up and keep fighting. And yesterday, this eviction from the large camp, you know, it's just a part of the process. I'm not deterred at all. LaDonna isn't deterred at all. We know we have to keep standing. The Dakota Access Pipeline and the fossil fuels industry in general has to be fought on all fronts. So we need these camps here. We need people on the front line. We need people locking down at the drill pad to oppose this pipeline. But we also need people fighting the legal battle. We need people in Washington, D.C. We need people to continue to divest from banks that support the fossil fuels industry. And so, you know, this is just part of the story. It's just part of it. We have people who have moved into LaDonna's Sacred Stone Camp, but we also have people who are going down to Texas to fight the Trans-Pecos pipeline. We have people who are going to Louisiana to fight the Bayou Bridge pipeline, and Florida to fight the Sable Trail pipeline. You know, this is, and even up into Canada and the northern United States to fight Enbridge. You know, we started a movement. We will continue to see that movement through for the sake of our children.
LaDonna Brave Bull Allard, we spoke with you at Sacred Stone Camp when we went to North Dakota, and also at the main resistance camp. This court case that's scheduled, a hearing for the 27th, can you explain what's expected to happen there?
The court cases that are coming up, I think there are more than just one on the 27th. There are others that are coming up. Right now, they are just trying to, make them follow the law, to do a complete EIS.
Environmental impact statement.
And to stop the construction, to sit down and talk. We understand that no matter what we do or say at this moment in time, we must stand by what the legal people are doing. You know, I always tell people, We are doing our best to follow the law, but we are also doing our best to stand up against injustice. And because they did the evictions, they thought they would stop the movement. All they have done is enhanced us. All they have done is made us understand what kind of limits they would go to. We know that when you are on the right side of justice, you continue to stand in prayer and nonviolent resistance.
Can you explain, Linda Black Elk, the fires that were set? Some said to return the land, the resistance camp, to its original condition before they were evicted. Is that true?
Well, you know, it's true that controlled burning is certainly a part of the Lakota culture traditionally. The Lakota would burn large pieces of land in order to get certain plants to grow and to enrich the soil. I can't say that that was the goal of the people who set those fires. I think a part of it was just that they didn't want to see, you know, when people came to camp, when people came to Oceti, they came for the long haul. There were people who built their lives in camp, who even would go to work every day from camp and then come back. You know, they had their families there. It really was about creating a sustainable community where people could live forever. People weren't putting foundations into the ground, but they were building homes, you know, in Mongolian gers and traditional Lakota teepees. And so I think people didn't want to see their beloved homes taken or confiscated by the same people who are attacking us and oppressing us. North Dakota has, you know, I've said it many times, North Dakota has lost its mind. I'm just a mom and I'm a teacher. And yet I can tell you dog breeds that have attacked me. I know the difference between tear gas, CS gas, and pepper spray, and the difference in the way that those feel. I know how to spot infiltrators and agent provocateurs. I know these things. I'm just a mom in the Dakotas. I'm just a mom on Standing Rock working to protect her children. And I know things that I never in my wildest imagination thought that I would have to know. And so, I understand the sort of panic and grief that people were going to. When they burned those structures, part of their hearts were in that. And it's just, it's a continued legacy of oppression by the United States government.
Was anyone injured in the blaze? We heard 2 children, a 17-year-old and a 7. Have you heard anything about that?
So we know a 17-year-old girl was injured, no 7-year-old, when a propane canister blew up that was inside one of the buildings. I will tell you that with what had happened at the front lines when the people came in and they broke up teepee poles and tore down the teepees. They did horrible things to the property, and so people at Oceti said they did not want that to happen to their property. As you know, each one of a teepee pole is sacred and how the teepees go up, and so they were just bulldozing and breaking up these teepee poles, and people did not want to see that.
Let me ask you about legislation. In North Dakota, the State House of Representatives has advanced a bill that would allow companies to conceal spills of oil, natural gas, and contaminated water. House Bill 1151, passing overwhelmingly, would end a requirement that fossil fuel companies report spills at well sites of less than 10 barrels or 420 gallons. What do you know about this?
So, we've heard over and over one of the arguments for the Dakota Access Pipeline. People keep telling us that pipelines are by far safer than traveling over the road or traveling over rail. Well, the issue is that pipeline spills don't get reported at the same rate as those other methods of transportation. And so we know that it's not illegal to leak a little bit of oil, right? It's not illegal for these pipelines to leak a little bit. So what I know is that that's always been going on. They've just legalized it and made it so that these companies who are putting money into the pocketbooks of North Dakota politicians don't have to report it. So, you know, they're friends and they're going to keep doing things for each other. That's all the more reason that we have to stand up and resist.
So as we wrap up, LaDonna Brave Bull Allard, what is next?
We continue to stand. We continue to educate. We will be everywhere to let people know that there's a better way to live. There's a better way to live with the earth, with green energy, and that it's time for us now to start divesting from fossil fuel because we must save the water. We must save the water.
We want to thank you both for being with us. LaDonna Brave Bull Allard of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe also runs the Sacred Stone Resistance Camp. And Linda Black Elk, medic and healer and mom, part of the Medic and Healer Council at Standing Rock, an ethnobotanist. This is Democracy Now! When we come back, we go to Madison, Wisconsin, to talk about the new EPA administrator. While he was approved last week, thousands of emails have just been released from the Oklahoma Attorney General office. He was the Oklahoma Attorney General. We'll speak with Lisa Graves about what's in them. Thank you. Stay with us.
Don't anybody gotta feel this way. Lift your head and turn the page to a brighter day. Don't forget to pray. Nah, don't forget to pray. Trust me, I know. Chasing money, trying to eat, trying to live, trying to help your sister's kids. Too many people living in the crib. It's alright, you will be alright. It's a fight, I know. Day to day to daybreak. I can feel the heartache stuck between a hard place to say the least. But please don't ever give up on your dreams. Don't ever knock this hustle, this is how you eat. Life gets better, trust me. I've been there in a dark space trying to solve a struggle. Yeah, trying to solve a struggle. You've been always on my mind, this is why that I let my mind fly. So high, so high, I've been always on the grind. If you could see yourself through my eyes, through my eyes. You've been always on my mind, this is why that I let my mind fly. So high, I've been always on the grind. If you could see yourself through my eyes, feel the vibe. I know the struggle, air getting so thin that you can't breathe. Hoping someone comes along to pop the bubble, thinking no one loves you. My native youth, don't you know I was you? Watching best friends turn to meth, never cried at funerals, cause I got so used
State
to
of Emergency by MC Rhetoric featuring Natani Means. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thousands of pages of newly released emails reveal how EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt closely collaborated with oil, coal, and gas companies backed by the Koch brothers to roll back environmental regulations during his time as Oklahoma's Attorney General. The documents were released just days after Pruitt was sworn in as the new head of the EPA, the agency tasked with curtailing pollution and safeguarding public health. Last week, Senate Democrats unsuccessfully attempted to postpone Pruitt's final confirmation until the emails were released. But Republicans pressed forward and confirmed him in a 52-46 vote, largely along party lines. As Oklahoma Attorney General Pruitt sued the EPA 14 times, the trove of new documents show how energy companies drafted language for Pruitt's Attorney General office to use to sue the EPA over environmental regulations. In an email from August 2013 from Matt Ball of the Koch-backed Americans for Prosperity to Pruitt's communications director, Ball writes, quote, "Thank you to your respective bosses and all they are doing to push back against President Obama's EPA and its axis with liberal environmental groups to increase energy costs for Oklahomans and American families across the states. You both work for true champions of freedom and liberty." These documents were obtained by the media watchdog group, the Center for Media and Democracy, after a lengthy battle. The emails were released because a judge ordered them released. For more, we go to Madison, Wisconsin, where we're joined by the group's executive director, Lisa Graves, also the publisher of Exposed by CMD.org and PRWatch.org. Lisa, welcome back to Democracy Now! Explain what these emails show. You just got thousands of them in the last 2 days.
Well, these emails help show the cozy relationship between Scott Pruitt and the industries that he was tasked with regulating as the Oklahoma Attorney General. And so what they reveal is more of that relationship, the way in which he was praised by the Koch brothers operatives, the way in which he was urged by energy company lobbyists to just cut and paste from their materials and from other documents that they had jointly or worked on together to produce. And this is part of a longer investigation that we've been conducting about Scott Pruitt and about the Republican Attorney General's Association, where you can see through the documentation we've obtained how much these industries are paying to curry favor with these attorneys general. And in this instance, you have this man who now is the head of our Environmental Protection Agency and has such close relationships. And I think that the Republican senators, Senator McConnell and the White House, were eager to rush his nomination through because they feared that more information, more evidence would come out about the closeness of those relationships. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We know they're still stonewalling us. We know that there are many thousands more emails that they have failed to produce and that are part of our ongoing set of requests for information about Scott Pruitt and about the communications of his office with these industries, including Devon Energy, Koch Industries, and more.
Let's go through some of the emails. In 2013, a lobbyist from the law firm Hunton & Williams, which represents major utility companies, sent Pruitt's deputy solicitor general a white paper and talking points. The lobbyist suggested the staffer should, quote, cut and paste from it when encouraging other states to file comments on an EPA protection aimed at addressing air pollution.
Well, right. I mean, you have that email that just came out, as well as the emails that were discussed by Eric Lipton in his New York Times story that won a Pulitzer Prize back in 2014, 2015. What you can see from that is this idea, that email, other emails, that maybe we should call them cut and paste Pruitt. Because basically the relationship between industry and industry groups or utilities and Pruitt's office was so close that there are numerous references to saying just cut and paste this, cut and paste that. You know, that's not what we expect of our attorneys general. That's not what we expect of the head of the EPA. These guys are not supposed to be doing the bidding of private industry. Private industry has its own lawyers. The lawyer who is the head of the Oklahoma Attorney General's office is supposed to represent all the people and the public interest, just as the head of the EPA is supposed to represent all Americans, not just the corporations. And yet you have this man who has basically spent his life's work advancing the industry position, targeting and attacking efforts to regulate the toxin of mercury, other serious pollutants, trying to undermine efforts to address the harms to our climate and more. And so that email is just one of many that shows this pattern that we see of this cut and paste idea for Scott Pruitt and his team.
So talk about the relationship that is exposed through these thousands of pages of emails that you got through a lawsuit, a judge ruling just, what was it, last week, that these should be released immediately, and the Senate moving very quickly to confirm Pruitt before the emails were delivered to you.
That's correct. The judge ordered that the first set of documents, that order came down on Thursday afternoon, and there was plenty of time for the Senate to wait to get answers, in part because it wasn't just our requests that were unanswered, but also numerous requests by senators on the Environment and Public Works Committee that Pruitt was stonewalling them as well. But there was this rush to push him through. Why the rush? There was no need for him to be advanced so quickly to helm the EPA. The Senate is entitled to information. More importantly, the American people are entitled to information. And what these emails show is a very friendly relationship between Pruitt's team and these energy companies. At one point, there's an email that talks about his chief of staff wanting to get a special tour, basically, to the top of Devon Tower, the biggest skyscraper in Oklahoma, because of this relationship they've cultivated with these energy companies. But there's more. There's more praise from these energy companies for the job he's doing. And beyond that, as part of our ongoing investigation, we've helped document how Scott Pruitt has done closed-door briefings with some of the hugest energy companies in the country, including Murray Energy, in which the panel was calling the Clean Power Plan dangerous. The idea that we should be taking measures to address carbon dangerous. These are extreme positions. They're the positions of industry, and you see it over and over again in these emails, the closeness, the coziness of these industry lobbyists, these lawyers, and the office that Scott Pruitt was running in Oklahoma.
Last month, the EPA administrator nominee at the time, Pruitt, testified in front of the Senate during his confirmation hearings. Senator Jeff Merkley questioned Pruitt about a 2011 letter the Oklahoma Attorney General sent to the EPA opposing regulations limiting emissions from the energy sector. Senator Merkley said much of the letter was largely written by the Oklahoma energy company, Devon Energy.
You used your office as a direct extension of an oil company rather than a direct extension of the interests of the public health of the people of Oklahoma. Do you acknowledge that you presented a private oil company's position rather than a position developed by the people of Oklahoma?
Senator, with respect, I disagree. The efforts that I took as Attorney General were representing the interest of the state of Oklahoma.
Why do you need an outside oil company to draft a letter when you have 250 people working for you?
Senator, as I've indicated, that was an effort that was protecting the state's interest and making sure that we made the voices of all Oklahomans heard on a very important industry to our state.
You said it all heard, but you only sent it on behalf of a single voice, the oil company. Thank you.
So that was Senator Merkley questioning Scott Pruitt, who was just approved as EPA administrator. Your response, Lisa Graves?
Well, Senator Merkley got that exactly right. It's really astonishing for someone in a position of public trust to give such special privilege to some of the richest corporations, the richest interests in our country, over the interests of ordinary Americans for cleaner water, cleaner air, for efforts to address harm to our climate. And I have to say, if the American people want to learn more about the swamp that Trump is drawing from, not draining, but the swamp that he's perpetuating and expanding, they can go listen to that C-SPAN debate all night last Thursday into Friday morning, where Senators Whitehouse, Senator Merkley, other senators were speaking out eloquently about the conflicts that Mr. Pruitt's actions represent, the concerns, the grave concerns they have about what he will do to our environmental protections, and just the depth of his stonewalling of the Senate and, more importantly, the American people about the true extent of his relationships with these companies and how much he will use his office to do their bidding and not to advance the interests of all people. And that letter that Senator Merkley pointed out is a salutary example of how he perceives his role is to represent their interests. He thinks that that's basically representative government action. Those corporations don't have a right to vote. People do. The American people have a say in these measures, and these statutes are on the books to protect us, not to protect oil companies and energy companies who have polluted our waters and our air and have harmed our climate.
Lisa, I want to get to two other issues. One is the headline today, Trump rescinding the Obama directive on bathroom use, dropping protection for transgender youth. Clearly, now the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, has played a key role in this. You wrote a letter opposing Jeff Sessions as Attorney General. We're seeing this as one of his first acts. Can you quickly comment?
Well, I'm not surprised, but I'm gravely disappointed that the office of the Attorney General would be used in the way that Senator Sessions, now Attorney General Sessions, is using it to advance discriminatory policies that hurt some of our most vulnerable people in our country, and those are young people who face such a high risk of suicide. I think it's an indictment of his character, Jeff Sessions' character, that he would push his office forward to undo the protections that have been put in place to try to protect these young people.
And finally, you're joining us from Madison, Wisconsin, where attorneys for the family of an African-American teenager who was shot dead by a city police officer have reached a more than $3 million settlement. It's about 19-year-old Tony Robinson, who was unarmed when Officer Matt Kenney forced his way into an apartment following a, quote, disturbance in 2015. He was shot, 7 times. Your response to this settlement that is, I believe, the largest in Madison?
It is the largest settlement, and I think we'll hear from the family later today about it. But this is a situation in which an enormous amount of force was used, even though the police said that force was justified. It really calls into question in Madison and cities across the country the use of force versus non-lethal force or non-lethal efforts to subdue individuals if there is an altercation or if there is a dispute. 7 shots fired is a significant amount. That settlement is a significant amount. I hope that that settlement means that there'll be more reforms to provide greater instruction and training for our police to make sure that there aren't
we're going to have to leave it there.
Shootings.
Lisa Graves of the Center for Media and Democracy. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us.